Hey, yo, what is up? It's your girl Jay, and it is time for another edition of Mag Flashback, y'all. Thank y'all for coming and watching my video. Welcome to my channel. I have plenty more of Mag Flashbacks. I think this is number 6 of my series, if I'm not mistaken. But today we are covering, and the light may get in the way, but we are covering the May 2001 edition of Vibe magazine featuring my girl, Janet D. Jackson. Love me some Janet. So, without further ado, we're going to go ahead and get started. And you know how I like to do it here. So, that's the magazine. And I actually have the physical copy. I always show that I have it. So, you don't think that I'm making it up, that I actually have it. So, the pictures that you're going to see, they are pictures that I take and from the magazine because, for one, sometimes they don't have the digital pictures available for me to, get off the site. So I just take the pictures of the magazine with my phone and I put them up. So sometimes they're not straight. Sometimes they're not the cleanest looking, but they are inside of the magazine as I'm talking about it. So you kind of feel that you're looking through the magazine with me. So we are going to go ahead and get started with the first page I'm going to cover, and I'm going to go here. Boom. All right. Now, this first one here, I just put this in here really because who doesn't like Tupac? And this was one of Tupac's posthumous albums. This was Until the End of Time, because obviously this is 2000, 2001. Tupac had passed away already. This was executive produced by Suge Knight and his mom, Afeni Shakur. And it says the first of 2 double albums recorded during Tupac's Machiavelli period, featuring over 20 previously unreleased tracks, including Until the End of Time, Letter to My Unborn, Let 'Em Have It, and Thug in You, Thug in Me. So that's an advertisement for that. Then we go here. Again, Vibe had a lot of advertisements for clothes, shoes, cologne, perfume, things like that. But the reason I have this in here is because I don't I don't remember, or I never knew how to pronounce this. So those of you that are watching, if you know what this is it NYC or is it Aniche? Because I've heard people pronounce it 2 different ways. It was a clothing brand. And so I always thought it was a cool way to say NYC because it's spelled ENYCE. So NYC, but people also call it Aniche. So not really sure. I never owned any of this, never really owned any of these clothes, but I just thought it was cool to turn my mic down a little bit. Thought it was cool to put in here. So next. The content. So it is also featuring, we know Janet was on the cover by herself, but is also featuring 112, Jada Pinkett. She was she was married to Will by then. But this is just table contents. You can see they're talking about 112, the Neptunes, Jada's feature, the portrait of a lady, and then they talk about Janet being on the cover and all that good stuff. Then some more advertisements. The Brothers, a movie that I really like. And again, prior to very heavy in the 90s, I would say, and even some of the 80s, but 90s, early 2000s, um, soundtracks really were the big thing. Like it was always a big thing to be featured on a soundtrack. So the Brothers here is being advertised. You have Eric Benet on here, you have RL, And then they're saying, Snoop Dogg is on here, Jermaine Dupri, Lil Mo, Gerald Levert, Dave Hollister, and many, many more. So it was pretty exciting to be on a soundtrack. And because we didn't hear a lot from our artists back then other than their albums, because again, social media wasn't like a huge thing yet. So the opportunity that you got to hear and see, if they made a video from your favorite artist or artist that you really like, for them to show up on soundtracks was pretty dope. And then I also have the advertisement for Coffee Brown just because I liked Coffee Brown. Did not have their album, but After Party was the jam. And the name of this album was Mars and Venus, Mars Venus. And Coffee Brown, which I have a picture of them later on. They did a little feature of them in this magazine too. They were a duo, a guy and a girl duo. And I personally, After Party was it for me. I didn't really hear anything else from them, but After Party was a jam. So that's why I have that in there. And look, if I'm not looking at the right camera, I'm used to looking at a different camera. So I'm trying to pay attention to the camera in front of me. The next thing I have up is another advertisement, just more advertisements. We have advertisement for lugs. Again, I just have some of this stuff in here just as nostalgic purposes. Never wore lugs. That wasn't my thing, but that was really, I guess, hot in those days. And then there's an advertisement for Tyrese's new album, 2000 Watts, which was going to come out May 22nd, 2001. Some of the featured songs is I Like Them Girls, There For Me, I Ain't the One, and I'm Sorry. So you could pre-order your copy of Tyrese's 2000 Watts at Sam Goody. This is still when you had to go out and purchase the albums from record stores, or I'm sure by then, maybe not, but I'm sure like Best Buy was selling CDs, and I'm not sure about Walmart because I went to just a normal record store to go buy my CDs. I went to CD Warehouse because they had a lot of old used CDs. So if it was stuff like from back in the day that I didn't want to pay an arm and a leg for a new one, I would go there and it would be like $2.99, $3.99. Or God, I can't think. Was it Blockbuster Music was one? Sam Goody was one. There was another one that I used to shop at, but a friend of mine worked at Blockbuster Music. And so I always got not the hookup, but he would tell me when stuff was coming in and I would just go there and pick it up around that time because I'm almost out of college. So I was living off campus and I can easily get to Blockbuster Music. So anyway, enough about that. So moving on to another feature in here. Now um this was about some of our artists that were getting arrested, and I'm trying to find a page. There we go. So if you guys remember, Puffy caught a case. This was back when he was dating J Lo. We all know something about having a gun in a club, and I don't know if this is true, but apparently, and I don't want to put rumors out there, but back in those days, I think we were told that Shine, which was one of his artists, took the fall for that, and he ended up being in prison. I don't even know if Shine is he still in jail or he's out now? I'm not really sure what Shine is doing. I think he's out now, but it was this whole thing. J Lo was dating Puffy, and everything was good until this incident happened. Her people were like, "Why are you at a club in the hood or wherever they were? We need to get you out of here." They broke up right after that because they didn't want her to have that much street cred. Like it was enough street cred just dating Puffy, I guess, but they didn't want her to be, seen as, I guess, in that light. dealing with being connected to someone who had a case or whatever. And then of course we know J Lo went on to be an actress. She let out several albums and things like that. And for as far as I know, her image is pretty squeaky clean. So I can see as a newer artist and just a newer face of Hollywood, I guess they just didn't want that image. So whatever. They broke up and that was that. But this article was just about Puffy and some other artists and people in the music industry having cases. But the thing was, it was never just solely based off their case. It was always, you know, when a black star, especially anything happens to them where they have to deal with the law or court cases or whatever, their race, they're carrying the race on their shoulders, their race on their shoulders, as well as if they're artists, then it's like, oh, hip hop, this is what hip hop is about. Like there are those thugs and those crooks and those killers and those murderers. And this is, hip hop was definitely on its way up, but hip hop was not the hip hop that it is now, where it doesn't matter. People are talking about everything. People go up for it. It is the number one genre. I think it's been number one for a super long time now, and it's made its turn. There isn't necessarily this tarnish on hip hop the way that it used to be, no matter what they talk about or what they rap sing about or whatever. And I don't want to give my opinion about hip hop today, but it's become its own culture. Whereas going in from the 90s to the early 2000s, hip hop was there, but it wasn't as dominant yet. We were still coming off the highs of R&B being dominant and neo soul making its way, and then the merging of R&B and hip hop together with artists like Mary J. Blige, TLC, SWV, stuff like that. So plus Puffy did a lot of 90s remixes or sampling in his music. So it kind of merged all together during that time. So it didn't, hip hop wasn't quite where it was. And so there was a lot of where it is now. There was a lot of hate on hip hop and rap during that time, um, especially in the 90s. Tupac, the whole, government trying to put certain labels on it, the parental advisory sticker ordeal that was happening. Two Live Crew went to Congress to talk about that. We all know they were trying to censor rap. It was just a whole thing going on. So anyway, with these stars dealing with that, they also this article just talks about also having to put hip hop on their back. And it's like hip hop is on trial, not just what these people are doing. So you see Suge Knight. Obviously, we know about Suge Knight. I believe he's still in prison. Slick Rick was, let me see, I didn't know. He served 6 years from 1990 to 1996 for attempted murder. Um, it says in 1990, Rick shot his cousin, Mark Plummer, who allegedly threatened and tried to extort money from him. I didn't really know that. Um, Back then, Suge Knight was serving 9 years for violating probation from a 1992 felony conviction on 2 counts of assault with a firearm. Keith Murray was sentenced to 39 months in prison in 1998 for second-degree assault after a jury found him guilty of smashing a bar stool over the head of 16-year-old David Hughes during a brawl in Connecticut nightclub. And then, of course, Tupac Shakur. We know about his legal woes, but he served 11 months of a 4.5-year sentence for sexually assaulting a female fan in 1993 in a Manhattan hotel room. A handgun was also found, and Shakur was charged with weapons possession in addition to sodomy and sexual abuse. He was found innocent of the weapons charges and sodomy charges, but he always maintained his innocence on the sexual assault. But we weren't there for that, so I don't know about that. But again, that was what that article was about. Now I'll put this in here. I had to put the Grill Master 4000s in here because these were hot in the 90s and 2000s apparently. These are Stacey Adams, but anybody wearing these now, if you're not over the age of like 55 to 60 and you don't have some kind of barbecue or grilling equipment in your hand, you don't why are you wearing these? But I just put that in there because these are actually being advertised. The slides, the two different kind of slides, and the sandals. Like people were rocking those back in the day, but nowadays they are mainly for cookouts from your uncles and grandfathers and dads that are grilling. So I'll put that in there. All right. And now there is next. There's a little write-up about Erica Badu. Hold on, let me adjust my mic. All right, a little write-up about Erica Badu. Nothing special. Just it was just showing or talking about a show that she had in New York City at the Radio City Music Hall, February 14th, 2001. Again, this was the beginning and rise of neo soul, and Erica Badu, Jill Scott, Kendrick, and Family Stone. Those were some of the artists that were emerging as leading that era of music. Then just some more kind of roundabout. This first one here is who did what, where, and when. So they actually had announcements, people that had lawsuits, people were charged with crimes, births and deaths. So some of the announcements that were going on during this time, there was the commemorating of the 1 year anniversary of the death of Big Pun. There was more information about Jennifer Lopez and Puffy being together after weeks of fierce denial. Rap music mogul Sean Puffy Combs and Latin pop diva Jennifer Lopez confirmed their split. The breakup was rumored to have been caused by Lopez's new relationship with backup dancer Chris Judd, but we know that's not necessarily, well, I wouldn't say it was true. I don't know. Maybe she was dating him, but also it had a whole lot to do with that case he was going through. Um, what else is here? New York City police have identified at least one of the 5 possible gunmen involved in a shootout ignited by rivalry between Lil Kim and Foxy Brown that occurred February 25th outside a New York hip hop radio station Hot 97. Surveillance videotape shows the suspected gunman climbing into Lil Kim's limousine as it fled the scene. Wow. I did hear of this. And I understand when I'm looking at this magazine, I'm kind of reliving it as I'm talking to you guys because I don't go through page by page of this. I just take pictures and then decide to talk about it. I don't remember this though. I kind of do, but I don't. It says one man was wounded in the incident that occurred when Kim's entourage encountered Capone, part of the rap duo Capone and Noriega. Noriega, who is Nori now, who is the host of Drink Champs podcast, if y'all know him from that. Some 22 rounds were fired between opposing groups. Police say at present time, police had made no arrests. CNN has denied involvement in the shooting. CNN, which is Capone and Noriega, the group. Wow, I did not realize that Lil Kim's crew and Foxy Brown's crew had a shootout. I mean, that just goes to show there was no love during that time between Kim and Foxy. But of course, I think a lot of this was denied. None of this is like, I don't know if this stuff is true or not. This is just what's in this magazine. Lawsuits. Lauryn Hill settled out of court for an undisclosed amount with four musicians seeking co-writing and co-production credits for The Miseducation of Lauryn Hill. In 1998, after Hill listed herself as sole producer of the album, pianist, guitarist, and a singer and a drum programmer. I'm not going to read all their names, but they are known as the New Arc Entertainment. They filed a lawsuit claiming that they aided in writing and producing the songs on The Miseducation of Lauryn Hill, which I think I don't know if they won that lawsuit, but that is because of some lawsuits. I believe that is why Lauryn Hill does not perform her original versions of any of these songs on The Miseducation of Lauryn Hill. That's the reason why, is because of certain lawsuits. And I guess she's not allowed to, I don't know if she's not allowed to or if she's just doing it out of spite, but she doesn't normally perform any of her songs the way we know them off the album. And it's because of this situation here, or a situation like that. Anyway, OJ Simpson charged, Eminem was charged, Outkast, Big Boy gave birth, not gave birth, his girlfriend gave birth to their son Cross on February 3rd. And that's it on that. And then there's a little write up. I just put in here, Miss Cleo. She just recently had a doc that came out about her. Don't know what channel that's on, but this was just a write up about Miss Cleo and all her dealings with her being a psychic. And she was really, really big back in the day. Not right at this time. This is kind of like her descent. But there was a time where she used to run the uh psychic realm when it was like Dion and Friends Psychic Network and Latoya Jackson's Psychic Network, and then you have Miss Cleo here. Um, Down at the bottom, it says Vibe Confidential. This is just more rumors. I'm not really going to go through all that. I don't know if it's anything super interesting in here. Yeah, I'm not gonna read any of that because some of that stuff is wild. More advertisement. Common is advertising for Reebok. Puffy, he had his own clothing line called Sean John. And usually in Vibe, so the earlier versions of Vibe, they always ended the magazine with 20 questions. At this point, they had started transitioning to moving the 20 questions further um, towards the beginning of the magazine, and I think eventually they took them out. But should I read these? I'm because again, this was a different time, so some of the language in here is a little not politically correct. So I don't need y'all canceling my channel because of that or canceling my videos. I'm simply reading out of a magazine, but I'll read a few of these questions. So, who else thinks Jill Scott was robbed when she did not win a Grammy? And we all know about the Grammys robbing people, right? Who's more notorious, Sean Puffy Combs or Robert Downey Jr.? Hmm. Um, Let me see. Isn't Talib Kweli one of today's most underrated lyricists? After such low record sales, have Boyz II Men finally come to the end of the road? Ha ha. With Lil Mo doing all these hot cameo appearances on other albums, other artists' joints, aren't we ready for her album based on a true story to drop? Who really thought Jennifer Lopez and Sean Puffy Combs would last as a couple? None of us did. Are we Aren't we more shocked that Ahmad and Felicia Rashad have called it quits? Yes, we were. Um, shouldn't the NBA have forced Vince Carter, Kobe Bryant, Kevin Garnett, and Steve Francis to participate in this year's All-Star Slam Dunk contest? Where the hell is Yo-Yo? Have you been up all night tossing and turning in bed, unable to get the Wu-Tang Clan's hauntingly beautiful nightmare I can't go to sleep out of your head? What else? Shouldn't Shaggy and Snoop Dogg collaborate and record a song called The Adventures of Snoopy Doo? No. And then somebody, I don't even know why, 2001, I don't know how old Monica was, but I just feel like, isn't Monica looking thick in all the right places in her video? Just another girl. It's just not, it's not necessary. But hey, stay tuned because more cringy stuff is on the way. All right, so here is a another like in the mix portion of this magazine. All right, so a few people in here, if you can see, we have Busta Rhymes, Ludacris, David Bowie, and Iman, Jada and Eve, Jada Kiss and Eve. Got Jennifer Lopez. Who is this with Jay Z? Frankie Raider. She's a super mannequin. I don't know who that is, and why did they say super mannequin? Did they mean supermodel? Who else is here? Mary J is on here, Bobby Brown. So yeah, just some people around town. And then this, another cult classic. I don't care what y'all say. Carmen, MTV's hip opera, Carmen will always hold a special place in my heart, no matter how corny y'all think it is. Now, I'm gonna tell y'all how way back I go. Hold on. I'm gonna grab something real quick. First of all, I know if you're young and you're watching this, you don't even know what this is. But let me go here. You don't even know what this is that I'm about to bring out as I take a quick break from the magazine. Hold on, because I don't want to lose my page. This this right here, this is my CD case, one of them. I had a couple. And this was a CD case. It was an organizer, so you kept all your CDs. Now I forget how many this holds. 300 maybe? No, it can't be 300. I don't know how many this holds, but all this has CDs in it. Now the reason I brought this out is because I want y'all to understand, and I have it backwards. Hold on. I want y'all to understand that I was really a fan of MTV's Hip Opera. So I'm gonna pull this out here. I have the CD. Here we go. It might be out of focus in this camera, but there is Beyonce, and these are all the artists that were on the soundtrack. Because yes, I bought the soundtrack, and yes, I still have. Still looking in the wrong camera. I still have the CD. When I tell you I keep everything, but yeah, this is the CD. So these are just pictures of some of the scenes, but on the CD you have Case, you have Destiny's Child, of course. Then you have pieces of the actual, because it is a soundtrack, songs from the actual hip opera are on here. So you have the Survivor remix featuring Brat, the introduction, which was performed by Brat. Um, who else is on here? Most Def, Mackay Pfeiffer. They were both in the movie or in this hip opera. The main reason I bought this was because Bootylicious, the Rock Wilder remix was on here. featuring Missy, and I love that version of that song. That's really the only one I listened to. I didn't necessarily like the original Bootylicious, but yeah, and I want to say it's been a while since I've seen it. I feel like I need to watch it again. I feel like either Brad or Wyclef, somebody was like the narrator in it. Now I don't know. Carmen, a hip hopera, was based off an older film called Carmen, which stars Dorothy Dandridge and Harry Belafonte, which was one of my favorite movies. This is way back in the day. I don't know when this movie came out. The 70s, the 60s, maybe. I haven't looked it up, but I used to watch this all the time. This was back when I was in my phase of watching like old black exploitation movies and stuff like that with like Pam Grier, and watching like Dolomite and Superfly and stuff like that. And I found this movie at the library because I used to hang out there when I was young. And I found this movie, Carmen, and it was actually a really good movie. So what MTV did is they got Beyonce to play Carmen, and I believe Mekhi Phifer played the husband. I can't remember his name now, but yeah, they just updated it. They made it more modern, but it was a good remake. Now, obviously, it is not winning any awards, but it did what it needed to do for the time. So it produced a great soundtrack in my eyes. So I'm gonna put that back. We're gonna get to uh back to this. All right. Now this I put this in here because anything that has to do with tech, I love putting it in there because I love seeing like what was like the thing that they were advertising back then. So these were things. This was featuring Dave Hollister of Blackstreet. Um, by this time, he had gone solo though. So this Infinity Intermezzo set, which is this number one, which is the speaker set, it costs y'all $6,500 for the speaker set. A combination TiVo recorder and satellite receiver. Now, that's number two. That's the black thing on top. TiVo, for those of you that don't remember that, TiVo was like one of the first, I would say name brand because it became popular. It was a DVR. So it was a way of recording TV without using your VCR. So this was the transition between using your VCR to record to TiVo, because you can record on TiVo, you could rewind while you're watching live TV. You can pause, you can do all that. This was all brand new stuff. Now, satellites also came out around this time, and they allowed you to have that capability. Some of them when you had the satellite service. So most of them was like Dish or Direct TV, which is still around now. But TiVo allowed you to have that capability, um, to be able to record or pause or rewind live TV using just regular cable. So that was the big thing. So that's that. That was $400. So DirecTV, I believe DirecTV, or if it's Dish now, one of them still owns TiVo, I believe. And I feel like I read this in a magazine to you guys, or maybe not, but one of the satellite companies bought TiVo, and TiVo is no longer like, it's not necessarily its own standalone company. It's with like one of these satellite companies, but it was $400 with DirecTV, and a subscriber fee. And you could record up to 35 hours of programming straight from any DirecTV device. You can pause live TV and everything that I just told you. I had just a regular TiVo. So I don't believe that This must have been before then because TiVo did have its own device that you can hook up to cable. And if you had DirecTV or Dish, they had something different, which would allow you to do the same, have the same capabilities. But anyway, the number 3, which is the silver thing right under that, is the Sony DVP S5000 DVD player. Y'all, $390 for that DVD player. In the middle, look at that TV. It's a 40-inch flat screen TV. It's flat screen, but it's got the big back. That TV, $2,500 for a 40-inch. They used to call it a true flat screen because the screen is flat. Old school TVs, they kind of bubbled out. These TVs had a flat screen, but the freaking TV was huge. It's not like the thin TVs we have now. That was $2,500. The Universal, the Philips Pronto TSU 2000, which is in his hand, and I don't know if y'all can see how big that thing is. It looks like, I don't know, some kind of handheld computer, but that universal remote was $400. And then he's sitting in a massage chair that is $2,995. All right, moving on, more gadgets. Again, this is tech during that time. These were things, the Cyber Survivor, 5 gadgets help you get through a treacherous day on the concrete jungle. You have your Motorola two-way pager. You have a GPS, standalone GPS. You have your Casio EJ800, which I think was like a Palm Pilot, which is similar to like, it didn't have the computer functions, but it can do different things. Like you can type on it, you can save things on it. It had different tabs for different things. I don't really know how to describe it. Um, this says, while you're feverishly searching for a phone number, it begins to rain enough droplets to see on into your organizer. Oh, it's an organizer. It's an 800 PDA and water resistant, shockproof, but it was an organizer. So think about this. You're carrying this this CD player, which has a 5-inch black and white. I'm looking at the wrong camera. 5-inch black and white monitor. I I didn't own one of these, but my grandfather did. Because he thought he was being hip because he had a new gadget. And oh my God. They actually came in clutch when you were traveling because we didn't have, you couldn't watch videos on demand like that. So that kind of came in clutch. But if you look at all this stuff, you got a GPS, a two-way pager, an organizer, and a this CD player with TV. And think about how all that is in our smartphones now, which is crazy. Speaking of phones, really quickly, we got the Motorola V Series 60C for $400. You had your Samsung SCH T300 for $200. You had your Simmons S40 was under $300. Sanyo SCP 5000 for $500. I'm not going to go through the bottom. Those were like MP3 players, CD players, and things like that, personal music playing devices. Also, this is when the Xbox first came out. I thought that was cool. So I'm trying to go through here. I'm actually taking more time than I thought I would take. Coming up next, these were some of the artists they felt like was coming up next. You have Sunshine Anderson. You have Coffee Brown, who I talked about earlier. And you have Rashida, who all of these were artists that were coming. I mean, I'm sure you remember and know who they are if you I talked about After Party. Everyone's heard it all before, I'm sure, by Sunshine Anderson. Again, these weren't super like I didn't hear. I know Sunshine Anderson did have other songs, but that was her biggest hit by far. But and Rashida, I'm not gonna say that I knew who she was. She was an Atlanta-based rapper, and I don't remember what song she was on. So forgive me if you're a fan of Rashida. I just don't remember a lot about her. And now let's get to the nitty gritty. Let's get to why we came here. This is the Janet interview. Now, again, I'm going to tell you guys, this is mad cringy. Like when I was looking through this to just refresh my memory on this article, I didn't realize how bad this was. I'm not even going to front. Like I can't believe that Janet was asked these questions, being the Janet Jackson, and then that she actually answered the questions. That's what's so crazy about this whole thing. So I'm gonna read through it. I'm gonna, do my job and read through some of these questions. But yo, please don't blame me for this. I am reading from this magazine again. This was a different time than it is now, and I any person that would ask these questions to anybody during an interview these days, I just feel like they wouldn't get far. So I don't know. But we'll go ahead and get started. So this is called Living Single. Janet Jackson cuts the velvet rope and all the ties that have held her down for so long. This is by Craig Seymour, and photographs by Michael Thompson. So Craig, I don't know what you were thinking with some of these questions, but I guess it was allowed back then. Okay, let's get into it. So, this interview was around the time where she was about to release All For You. So this is the next album after, again, looking at the wrong camera. This was after the Velvet Rope. And Velvet Rope was an amazing, amazing album. She was touring during this time. Let me see. They says that let me see where we should start. So it says the youngest member of the Jackson family at 35 had a successful multimedia career before it was commonplace. She starred in feature films, Poetic Justice, done a short but memorable TV show stints on Good Times, Different Strokes, and Fame. And of course, she had an influential music career from her spunky 1986 breakthrough Control to 1997's darkly personal masterstroke, The Velvet Rope, that you can see her incredible imprint on today's songs and videos by pop new reigning princesses like Aaliyah, Britney Spears, Jennifer Lopez. The past year has been one of her biggest yet. She starred in the 123 million grossing Nutty Professor 2, The Clumps. Scored a number one hit with the blissful Doesn't Really Matter and received a plethora of props, the American Music Awards Merit Award, and the inaugural MTV Icon accolade. So that was some of the stuff that she was doing. Again, she was getting ready to release All For You, but her lead single was Doesn't Really Matter, which was also from the Nutty Professor movie. Now, this guy, he brings up her song, Would You Mind? He says, a warm seduction where she asks if she can lick you, please you, suck you, taste you over a spacey electro thump. and Come On Get Up, a tribal house jam on which she recently newly which the recently newly single star proclaims I feel so free. So he joins her in Minneapolis, the home of the Flight Time Studios, which is Jimmy Jam and Terry Lewis's studio, which is where she did a lot of her recording for her albums because they were the executive producers of a lot of her music. They are in the studio, which was named Janet Studio, which is studio number 3 in the complex. And here is the question and answer portion of this interview. So this is after she is broken up with Renee, divorced. We found out that she was actually married to him. We did not know that. It was all a surprise to us. We didn't know this until after they said they had broken up. So he's asking her, does she date? And she says she really doesn't, never really dated. Most of the guys that she's been with, she ended up marrying them. And she just didn't date a lot. She would meet someone, fall in love, and then they end up getting married, which was James DeBarge and Renee. And she says that dating, she's never did that before. She says, think about it. Two people that I really got involved with, I ended up marrying, which is what I just said. My friends are teaching me how to date. I get off the phone with the guy and I call up my friends and say, okay, he said such and such. Does he like me? And they're like, Jan, you don't think he likes you? How many hints do you need? But I don't want to assume and look like a fool. So he asked her to describe her best date. She says, I went to dinner. It was nice. Then we went back to my place and talked. And he's like, And she said, and that was it. I really need to get to know a person before anything else is going to happen. And he says, has sex changed for you now that you're single? Which is a wild question, I feel, to ask somebody, but this is not even scratching the surface of questions that he asked. She says it's definitely different. It's never the same when you're with someone for the first time. That's the part I absolutely love. When there's newness, there's a little bit of awkwardness. I think that it's very sexy, but at some point you want someone to call your own. I'm not, I'm not to that point yet though. Then he asked, do you think about AIDS now more than that you're single? She says, of course, a lot of thoughts go through my head, but if I let that control my life, I'd probably be celibate. I don't think I could ever do that. And then he asked, on your new single, All For You, you're talking about some guy's package. That's a reoccurring theme of yours. And then Janet says, I'm a size queen, right? Honestly, I am. I can't lie. My friends sometimes say, Janet, is not always about the size, but the magic and the wand. And I'm like, there's nothing wrong with a big magic wand. So he says, okay, so if you're on a date and you see the guy is not packing, what do you do? I just think this is wild that a guy's answered. I mean, is it just me? A guy's asking this question to Janet? I don't know. But he asked, if you see a guy not packing, what do you do? And she says, that's when you fake a backache. Suddenly your back goes out. I've learned that from my friends. Um, he asked, what won't you put up with in a potential boyfriend? She says, well, everyone has their idiosyncrasies. And when you love someone, you put up with those things and you realize you can't change that person. And you want to be with that person, whether they're willing to change or not. Then he brings up the domestic violence. And he says, some people may confuse those idiosyncrasies with actually being abused. And he was like, how do you kind of tell the difference? And she says, when you're having second thoughts, when you feel that it's bringing you down, when you feel like you're stagnant, when you feel that you can't move one way or the other, when it's affecting your work, things like growing up, I felt no matter how much of mess someone dished out, you stay behind that person. No matter what they do to you and how badly they treat you, you will still be there for that person. That's what I was shown growing up. But later I was like, wait a minute. I don't have to do the same thing with my life. This isn't cool. I'm not feeling this. I'm going to change it. And it's so difficult for me to say, look, I got to take care of myself. That seems so selfish to me. Then she talks about some of her growing up with her parents and how she saw them, because we all know the story of Joe Jackson and everything like that. She did say her parents weren't affectionate. She never really saw them be affectionate. So that was something that was kind of foreign to her. Um, she's a lot like her mom, but at the same time, she had to come into her own, and kind of learn what not to do, I guess, from watching her parents. Let's see. He says, "Do you ever think about the characters you played? What might be what how did he say that? What they might be doing now?" Do you ever think about the characters you played, what they might be doing now? Like, would Justice from Poetic Justice have a book deal yet? And she says she'd be very successful at this point. She was very strong-minded. She was a very strong-minded person who knew what she wanted. She gone through a lot, but she was committed to her poetry, and that was her passion. She definitely be writing, maybe even for a big screen. He asked about Cleo from Fame. She said Cleo wanted it so badly, but she didn't think she would make it as a star. What about Penny from Good Time? She says she was a sweet little girl. She'd had major issues, really. All that burning and all that abuse would resurface in her life at some point. And I think that's what she'd be dealing with now. Then he asked her, speaking of having issues, why do you think people are so interested in whether you're fat or not? And then she says, well, my weight has fluctuated. I'm human, but I think the obsession has more to do with them than me. And do you think people have the right to know whether you've had plastic surgery? She says, no, it's my business. Would people want everyone in their office knowing every single thing about them? I don't think so. He asked her, do you think you're sexy? She says, I don't think I'm sexy. And that's no bullshit. With God as my witness, I do not think I'm sexy. So they go on into that about being sexy and all this stuff. And then he starts asking her, what is the sexiest part of your body? Or what do you think this, what part of your body do you think is sexiest? Or is that a question shot to hell? And she says, I'll tell you which part of my body I like the most. It's the small of my back. Um, then for some reason he goes from that. He starts asking, he said, well, that's interesting because it's a part you can see easily, is also very vulnerable because if someone is messing around in that area. And then she says it feels good, especially in a special place for a special person. Then he goes and asks her about Jennifer Lopez. Um, if she likes her music, because we all know Jennifer Lopez started dancing with Janet. She did not do the tour for Janet Dot, that album, but she was in the video That's the Way Love Goes, which we all know. Now she started dancing. I know I said she started dancing with Janet. She started with the Fly Girls on In Living Color, but she eventually moved on to dance with Janet. But she did not stay to do the tour because she wanted to start her career. Now it says, do you remember when she was one of your dancers? She says, yes, she was supposed to do the whole Janet tour, but she only did That's the Way Love Goes video. Then she called and said she wanted out because she wanted to do her own thing. And then he says she probably wanted it to be her video. And Janet says, well, she's doing it now and she's doing it very well. Then he says, what do you think when you watch Britney Spears perform that those are your old dance moves? And she says, people say that. And she does remind me of myself, like when she yells stop and sing and dance and the whole chair thing. He says, do you think a young black woman could have had as much success selling 13 million copies of her debut album? And she says, well, it's always been harder for us as a people. We have more of a struggle. It's the same thing with Jackie Wilson and Elvis Presley or Benny Goodman and all the black swing players that came before him. So then he says, let's get into some rumors. Are you lesbian lovers with Shawnette, one of your choreographers? Choreographers, sorry. It's funny because those rumors are still going around to this day. But anyway, he asked her if she's lesbian lovers with Shawnette. She says, I've heard rumors about myself and Josie, myself and Tish. Those are all her dancers, were her dancers back then. About myself and Tina, who was her main choreographer, Shawnette, and another dancer, the three of us. I think it's because we're so close when we're on tour. There are times when we've all gotten in the same bed to watch a movie. That's just us. But if a waiter walks in and sees us, he might think there's something going on. So then he says, if you were bisexual, would you say so? And she says, I'll have to see where my life is at that point and how I felt. And then he talks about coming out and does she, if it wasn't such a big deal, would she come out and say she's bisexual or something like that? And she just says, um, it is a big deal. She didn't admit to anything. She just said, yeah, things like that is a big deal. I would have to, you know, primarily because of my family and how everybody perceives me and stuff like that. So again, a different time. Something about now he asked her something about why don't you ever return Puffy's calls? And then she says that's more gossip. He never called me. I never not returned one of his calls. He has invited me to his place in the Hamptons a couple of times, but I've never gone. And then he says why? And she says because he invited me for the weekend. So whatever that means, that's italicized. Then he asked her about Q-Tip. And he says, what's with you and Q-Tip? She says he's a great guy. What has he done that's so great? She says it's his friendship. He's real with me. I love the conversations that we have. Every time we talk, there's something I learn. And I love being with him, listening to him speak. I love the music that he creates. And I love the music that he creates and shares with me. Sometimes he'll just leave music on my phone and I absolutely love it. And it doesn't hurt that he's cute. And he says, is that the type of guy you want to be with? She says, yes. And he says, have you been romantically involved? And she says, let's just say we're very close friends. That's cute. You nodded your head. Yes. She says, Tip and I are very good friends. And then he says, what was your first impression when you met him? She says, we were working on Poetic Justice, doing our kissing scene, and Tip kissed me, and I wouldn't kiss him back. He was tonguing me, and I'm thinking, oh God, he probably thinks I'm the worst kisser ever. But I was embarrassed because Renee was standing there. I was afraid that Renee would afraid. I was afraid that Renee would feel that there's something else going on. Then they talk about Renee and is he jealous? Um, she says that he's not really a jealous person, but he did not necessarily like when she was with Antonio Sabato Jr. in the Love Would Never Do Without You video. He couldn't watch them being together. He asked her, was she attracted to Tupac when she first worked with him? She said she thought he was really cute. She said, what would tickle me is that he had that whole tough image and he was such a sweet guy. His nickname for me was Square. He says, why? She said, maybe because I was just square to him, but he'd be like, where's Square? Come here, Square. He asked about the child rumors, which we've heard so much about. She says, no, I don't have a kid. I don't even know where that rumor came from. And then they talk more about the breakup between her and Renee. It was kind of devastating for her. He says, do you, while he's talking about rumors, he talks about the marriage to Renee and, how people probably won't believe her a lot of times since she lied about being married. She says she understands that, but she wanted to keep that out of the spotlight. They were married for 8 years. They were together for 13. It just didn't work out. And then he says, what struck a lot of people as odd is that you broke up shortly after you went public with his role as a collaborator on your work. And she said, yeah, pretty much she wanted to also, they just kept that secret. She felt bad because in public he wouldn't get the credit. She had to say that she was doing those things on her own. And then he says, how does it feel to be portrayed? She says, friendship and loyalty and family are so important to me. And for someone to just betray me, whatever the reason may be, cut so deeply. Because of this career, it's a lot harder trusting people and deciding who to let in your inner circle, who you don't let in, who you want to let in because you like them so much and you're taken by them. And yet there's a fear. It's hard because everyone needs friends. You need to be able to call someone and say, hey, are you busy? I need to vent. But who do you choose to do this with? Or do you hold it inside? And if you hold it inside, how long is it going to manifest itself? Who can you cry to without seeing it in the paper the following week is really tough. And that also makes it tough to find good romantic relationships when you want to be intimate. And he says, are you scared guys are going to say I had Janet? And she says, of course, but I've been very fortunate. I have had guys page me and say no one has to know, not pager. What do you want to tell people about Renee? She says, um, I'm just going to miss him. We had a great friendship. That's all I can say. We don't talk or anything, and it hurts. I've never in a million years thought this would happen. Not necessarily us being not being together anymore, but not speaking and all the stuff that's going on between us. I would never thought that he would have done this because it's just so different from what he's ever said to me. And then he says, do you understand why he's doing what he's doing? And she says, I think he's hurt. I think part of it may be ego. There are only things that I can, those are only things I can really think of. I still love him. It's a funny thing about it. The funny thing about it is that I remember our conversation we had about ending our marriage. And he said, you know, that everyone is going to find out that we were married. And I said, well, the only way they will find out if it came from you, and it did come from him. There are times when it feels like it just happened yesterday and there's a bit of a sting, but I have to move on. I have to keep it going. I can't let it stress me out, stop me from reaching my goals. I'm glad that I'm in the state of mind that I'm in the state of mind that I'm in. It didn't have to be that way. I could have been one messed up black child, but um I could have been emotionally worse off than I was when I made Velvet Rope, but for some reason, God has put me in a different place in space, and I'm so appreciative of that. I have to honestly say it's in God's hands. So that's that's that on Janet. And I'm sitting up here reading this. It didn't even go to the other page, but as you can see, they have a little montage of some of Janet's pictures. I mean, Janet was a baddie, still is a baddie. But in the pictures, you can see her on Nutty Professor 2. You can see her and Renee, her on Good Times, her with her brothers and her sisters, her during the Control era, her during the is this Velvet Rope? Or is this all for you? This might be Velvet Rope. Um, her with James DeBarge, her first marriage, her on Different Strokes. So you can see all those pictures and of her, of course, her just looking beautiful because that's what she does. All right. This is just a write up about Redman. Nothing special. It's just talking about him and him acting and then him releasing a new album. We don't have to get into that. They also had a write up about 112. And again, just a short write up is just talking about them kind of rising to fame. They were talking about where they first met. Like during this article, they're at in the parking lot of one club 112 where everything started, where they sang or met JD. Did not know Michael Keith was the founder of the group. I didn't realize that, but he is. But shout out to Michael Keith. Um, but yeah, it's just a really short write up just about them and their. I believe they were getting ready to drop their third album. They were their third album called Part Three, and how they were kind of like the big men on campus, like the sex symbols and things like that. So that's a picture of them. Then we have India Irie. I put that in there because that album, Acoustic Soul, her first album, is amazing. If you have not heard it, you need to go you need to go listen to it because it's dope. Then this right here is the hit list. This is just talking about some producers that were big during this time. Mike City, Jane Poser, excuse me. The Neptunes, Timberland, Rodney Jerkins, Jermaine Dupri, Dr. Dre, Rock Wilder, Alchemist, Baby Dub, of course. Did I say Dr. Dre, Jermaine Dupri? They have a write up in here about the Neptunes, which we know they were super big in the early 2000s. They have a small little write up in here about No Women Allowed, which was talking about kind of like the battle or the battle of women to try to be seen as producers and being taken seriously in the industry as really good producers. You have Missy in here. There's another producer by the name of The Angel, and then you have Beyonce in here. So of course we know Beyonce over the years kind of took control of her own um, career, and now she owns her own entertainment company, which produces and does a lot of things for her. So she kind of made her own way into that. She executive produces all her albums and things like that. Missy, can't say enough about Missy. Missy, people sleep on Missy and the amount of work she has done up till now. And even during this time, 2000, 2001, Missy had done so much even leading up to there. Like, people don't really realize how instrumental she was in a lot of artists' careers as a songwriter, as a producer. But again, people don't, when you think about producers, people don't really bring up women's names. But that was just a little markup about those producers. Oh, and this little piece I put in here, I thought it was pretty, I don't know. If you're trying to get the best bang for your buck and you can't afford one of the top producers, you can get these other producers, which I thought was a little bit shady. Well, they say, well, the if you can't afford the big names, try these talented but less well-known hit makers. So if you can't get Babyface, try Shep Crawford, who did Stranger in My House and As We Lay. If you can't get Rodney Jerkins, you can try Chad Dr. Chess Elliott, who worked with Destiny's Child on Jumpin' Jumpin' and was doing some work for Monica. If you can't get Jimmy Jam and Terry Lewis, you can try Tim and Bob, who did Thong Song for Cisco and Missing You by Case. If you can't get Dallas Austin, you can try Christopher Tricky Stewart, who did Maya's Case of the X, and JT Money and Cisco and Soleil. Y'all remember Soleil? And yeah, that's it. So then there's another little write up in here about Jada Pinkett. This is just talking about her starting to do more acting, her marriage to Will Smith. Y'all, look how little Willow and Jaden are. Look at that. She was like a tiny little baby. It's so cute. This had to be at the Wild Wild West premiere or something like that. But that was just a little Q&A, just talking about some of the projects she was working on or that she had done, like Set It Off, Minister Society, Bamboozled. She was working on new movies that were coming out, Kingdom Come, and then she had just signed on to do The Matrix 2 and 3, which we know Aaliyah was originally supposed to do that, but it ended up, she passed away. Unfortunately, Jada ended up getting those parts. So it just talked about that in some of her movies and stuff that she was in. Next is just some artists that they felt was coming up next, and they just had them in like high fashions. I forget. Let me see what as I get to that page. This is called Chez Chic. And this is Girl Power. These are some up and coming artists. 9 new female singers. It says 9 new, but I don't have all 9 on here. Female singers redefining the term girl power in the latest of French fashion. So first you have, well, in my book it's Olivia, but on the screen you have 3LW, you have Olivia, which is at the top, and then on the bottom you have Christina Milian. Then here, this is some of the fashions that were in during this time. Again, I always like to look back and see things like that as I turn my pages, but you can see, what do we have here? Tommy Hilfiger, Nautica, Eniche or NYC, Levi's. You got some Nikes. You got the Wallabies, the Clark's Wallabies. Shout out to Detroit. You can see the Superstar Adidas. You can see some Tim's, Fat Farm, PNB Nation, Calvin Klein, Mecca, Polo, and some more Tommy. So those were the fashions during that time. Then as we round it out, Revolution. So Vibe had started going to rating albums using the record, like the source had the 5 mics. So Vibe had, I believe it was 5 albums. So if you get 5 records, you had a masterpiece. 4 records was exceptional. 3 records were solid. 2 records were weak, and 1 record was whack. So as you can see on this page that I have up, Cases, Open Letter, they gave that 3.5 albums. John B, Pleasures You Like, got 3.5 albums. And then some of the other ones I don't have pictures, but I'm going to read them through real quick. Big Pun, Endangered Species was 4 albums. Diana Ross, The Anthology, got 4.5 albums. Ultra Nate, Stranger Than Fiction, got 3.5 albums. Mickey Howard, 3 Wishes, got 2.5 albums. DJ Smash presents Pornography, the Blue Note remix CD, that got 2 albums. I guess they didn't like that. Angie Martinez, the Up Close and Personal Project, she got 2.5 albums. The Kingdom Come soundtrack by various artists, that got 2.5 albums. Jesse Powell, JP was the name of the album. They got 3 records. Luke, Something Nasty, got 2 records. So they replaced the 20 questions at the end of the magazine with the ratings of the albums, because that was what magazines did. Last but not least, it was a write-up about Lil Mo. This was her time during the early 2000s. She was featured on everybody's albums. Her own records were very highly anticipated, because you can hear her on Fabulous. You can hear her with Missy. You heard her on different soundtracks. So for her to come out with her own stuff, that was just like, really, really anticipated. But she talked about some of the songs that she was on, like Put It On Me with Ja Rule, the remix with her and Vita, Missy Elliott's Hot Boys, that was her singing on Hot Boys, Old Dirty Bastard, Good Morning Heartache, Jay-Z's Parking Lot Pimpin', and then on her own album based on a true story, she talked about her songs My Story, Superwoman Part 2, I Ain't Gotta, Tada, Time After Time, and Superstar. So Lil Mo, you can say a lot about her, but you cannot say she ain't got vocals. So that brings us to the end of the show. So let me get back to the beginning here. This ran a little long. I didn't mean for it to run as long as it did, but it was a lot of good information in here. Again, this is the May 2001 edition of Vibe magazine featuring Janet Jackson. Hope you enjoyed it. So before I get out of here again, I want to thank y'all for watching. Please remember to like, share, subscribe, all that good stuff. Hit that little bell wherever it is as you're watching on my YouTube channel, go ahead and hit that bell so you can get a notification the next time I drop any other kind of video. It can be another mag flashback. I do have a couple of other kind of bonus videos I want to do that have to do with my podcast. You can find all my information here on the bottom of the screen. That is, wait, let me get my hand up there, right down there. You can find everything out about me and my show at jsquick3pod.com. All my social media is there. So hopefully you like what you saw. Follow me on social media if you like. Um, Every video that I do is on YouTube, but you can also find it under the videos tab on my website as well. You can listen to my podcast episodes on my website as well, or you can find links to other streaming services. Say if you have Apple Music or Spotify or Google Podcasts and you want to listen to them there, feel free. But go ahead and subscribe to my podcast, subscribe to this YouTube channel, and thank y'all again for watching. I appreciate it. See y'all next time. Peace out.